As Aizawa walked to his class with the former villain Deku, he couldn't help but steal a glance at him. The boy's eyes were dull, and his face showed no emotion, which tugged at Aizawa's heart. It was clear that Deku had endured a lot, reminiscent of Todoroki's struggles. During the interrogation, Deku had been mostly unresponsive, only expressing disdain for heroes and villains, particularly All Might, which surprised Aizawa. Most kids idolized All Might. Deku had hinted at knowing a secret about the hero but didn't elaborate. He eventually revealed that he was forced into villainy, and Aizawa noted the scars covering his arms and face, dreading to think about the condition of his back and stomach. When they entered the classroom, silence fell over the students. Aizawa addressed the class, introducing Deku as the villain they had recently captured. He reassured them that Deku wore quirk-canceling bracelets and posed no threat, urging them to be respectful during his introduction. Deku stood before the class, feeling the weight of their gazes. Taking a deep breath, he maintained a neutral expression as he introduced himself. "My name is Izuku, but everyone called me Deku. Pleasure to meet you." He bowed slightly and, upon raising his head, noticed a boy with spiky blonde hair staring at him. "Deku?" the boy asked, surprise evident in his voice. "Yes. You look familiar," Deku replied. The boy's expression shifted from confusion to anger. "Katsuki Bakugo, ring any bells? We were childhood friends, remember? Where have you been for 3 years?" he exclaimed. Deku's eyes darkened as memories flooded back. He recalled calling Bakugo Kaken before being taken by the League of Villains. The nickname felt childish now, especially since Bakugo had bullied him and once told him to end his life. "Ah yes, Katsuki, I remember everything you did," Deku said, glaring at him. Bakugo's expression shifted to one of shock, and he sat down, visibly shaken. Deku turned to Aizawa, asking where his seat was. Aizawa pointed to the one behind Bakugo, and once seated, the lesson began. Aizawa announced that they would be doing training and instructed everyone to change and meet him on the field. Deku followed the class to the locker rooms, choosing an unused locker to change. He felt self-conscious as he removed his shirt, revealing scars from his past. He hurriedly changed and left the locker room, finding a spot on the floor to sit and wait for the others. Aizawa emerged a few minutes later, briefly amused before returning to his usual indifferent demeanor. Deku lay back on the floor, watching the clouds drift by. Soon, he sensed the presence of his classmates and sat up, noticing everyone looking at him. He stood and faced Aizawa. "Today, we're focusing on hand-to-hand combat in pairs, and I will be selecting the pairs," Aizawa announced, prompting some groans from the students. As Aizawa called out the pairs, Deku's attention was drawn to a small boy with purple ball on his head reaching out to a girl with pink hair. Acting on instinct, Deku swept the boy's feet out from under him and placed his foot on his chest, causing the boy to yelp in surprise. "Try that again, and see what happens," Deku warned, pressing down slightly. The boy raised his hands in surrender, and Deku released him, straightening up. "I apologize for the disturbance, sensei," but he was about to touch the girl inappropriately, and I'm sure she wouldn't have appreciated it, he said, bowing slightly. "It's fine, problem child," Aizawa replied, and Deku straightened again. "Off you go into your pairs. Izuku, you're with me," he continued. Deku nodded and followed Aizawa to the side, both of them getting into a fighting stance. I stood in front of him until he caught his breath, then I lent him my hand and helped him to his feet with ease. We turned and realized that a small group of students was watching our fight. I heard Sensei sigh before speaking up. "Good work, everyone. Go change and head to class or whatever." He turned to me, "Good work, problem child." Aizawa nodded at me before turning on his heel and leaving. An acute smile formed on my face at the praise before I wiped my expression clean and went to change once again. Once I was dressed, I walked back to the classroom and sat in my seat with my head resting on my arms as I waited for the next class to start. 5 minutes later. Everyone walked into the classroom talking quite loudly, but I was minding my own business when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I flinched and looked up to see the pink-haired girl in front of me with a big smile and her hand outstretched. "Mina Ashido, nice to meet you," she exclaimed as I shook her hand. "Izuku, or you can call me Deku." "Nice to meet you too," I introduced. She continued, "I just wanted to say thank you for saving me from that guy earlier, and also I saw your fight with Sensei, and you were so impressive. Oh, and one more thing, can I be your friend, please?" She dragged out the "please" at the end, but I wasn't sure how to respond to that since I've never had a proper friend before. So, I just told her the truth. "You're welcome about the guy, and thanks for the compliment, but I've never had proper friends before, so I don't even know how to be your friend." "Sorry," I shrugged. The whole class fell silent after that, and all eyes were on me, making me feel uncomfortable. It was silent for about 10 seconds before Mina grabbed my hands, bringing them closer to her, and I tensed up. "I'm going to be your first friend then, okay? I will show you what it's like to have friends. There's no way of getting out of it, I'm your bestie now," she said, smiling. I was confused. I am a villain, why would she want to be my friend? "Why do you want to be my friend, though?" "I'm a villain. How do you know that I won't just hurt you or something?" I asked, tilting my head with a confused look on my face. "Because you're in a villain rehab, and I'm sure if you wanted to hurt me, you would have by now. Plus, everyone deserves a second chance, right? And you're super cute, and I just love making friends, so we're friends now, and I'm not taking no for an answer, okay?" Mina explained. I just nodded, not really knowing what else to do. She squealed and then hugged me. I froze in place, I hadn't had a hug in years. I forgot what one felt like, but it was warm and comforting. I slowly hugged back and buried my face into her neck. Izuku's POV. I've been at UA for about 2 weeks now, and so far, the only people who talk to me, other than some of the teachers, are some of the Baku squad, at least that's what Mina calls them, Mina, Shiro, Kaminari, and Kirishima. Bakugo sometimes talks to me, well, more like yells at me. I think he tried apologizing for what he did to me for all those years when we were kids, but he seemed to struggle and just stormed off, so I don't actually know if it was an apology or not. Mina somehow convinced me to have a game movie night with the class, so that's what we are doing right now, sitting in the common room about to play, Never Have I Ever. We are all sitting on the floor with Mina to my right and Denki to my left. Once everyone is settled, Mina explains the game. Everyone has to put up 10 fingers, and if you have done the thing that someone asks, then you have to put a finger down. Whoever has the most fingers left at the end of the game wins. Mina explained. Everyone put 10 fingers up, and Mina started. "Never have I ever broken a bone," she said. Me, Todoroki, Mina, and Denki put a finger down. Mina looked at me. "Okay, Green, your turn." I thought for a moment before coming up with something. "Okay, never have I ever gotten a tattoo." Me, Shiro, and Bakugo put a finger down while the rest looked shocked and started asking to see them. "Alright, shut up, you extras. You can guess who that was." "Oh my gosh, Green, you never told me you had a tattoo. Can you show us, please?" Mina pleaded. I sighed and stood up, pulling my shirt off and letting her scan over the tattoos. I had a tattoo over the left side of my chest that said, "Death," in cursive, and I had another tattoo on my right forearm. Mina squealed and started to examine them for a couple of seconds before I got uncomfortable and put my shirt back on. I was glad no one asked about the scars. There were a couple of disgusted looks, but other than that, no one reacted to my scars. After a few rounds, we got bored, so Mina suggested we play Truth or Dare, but with a bottle, so whoever it lands on has to answer a truth or dare. Urarika spun the bottle, and it landed on me. I felt a little nervous to answer since she is one of the people that dislikes me, but "Dare," I said, looking straight at her. She smirked. "I dare you to kiss the hottest person in this room." I blinked a couple of times before I turned to Shiro, who was next to Mina, and crawled over to sit in front of him. When our eyes met, his went wide. I looked into his eyes, then to his lips, before looking back into his eyes, silently asking if it was okay. When Zero nodded, we both leaned in. When our lips met, it felt like a spark ran all the way down my body. I grabbed the back of his head to deepen the kiss before letting go and moving back. Zero's face was really red. I gave him a small smile before going back to my seat. Mina was fangirling quietly with Denki while most of the class didn't seem bothered. Well, there were a few who didn't like it, namely Uraraka. I looked Uraraka in the eye and could see that she was hurt, annoyed, and even a bit disgusted. I thought to myself, did she think I was going to kiss her? The hurt look in her eyes quickly turned to anger as she stood up and raised her voice. What was that? I said the hottest person is Zero, he's like a 5 you could have kissed Bakugo or something, or Jairu, or Momo or even, I cut her off before she could say more. Who, you? No thanks, you're like a 2, a 3 at best. You said hottest person, you didn't specify if it was the best looking person in your opinion or mine, so why don't you sit down and be quiet before I have to make you? I said calmly at first, but my irritation crept in at the end. Zero was a very attractive guy in Izuku's opinion, and he didn't appreciate her comments. She immediately fell silent and sat down with a huff. Mina and Denki tried to comfort me since I was a bit upset, but a hug from Mina calmed me down, and the games continued. After another hour or two of playing games, we decided to watch a movie. Mina, Denki, and I sat on one of the couches. I was in the middle with Mina's head in my lap while I played with her soft hair, and Denki cuddled into my side. At some point, Zero sat on the floor between my legs, and I used my other hand to play with his hair. I felt comfortable and warm, and even though it was just from 3 people, I felt loved and cared for the first time in a long time. I let myself drift to sleep about halfway through the movie, cuddled up to Mina and Denki, with Zero still between my legs on the floor. A small smile spread across my face, and just before I fell asleep, the only thought in my mind was, maybe I can finally be happy. Aizawa's POV. Closing the door to Nizu's office, I let out a big sigh. Honestly, I don't get paid enough for this. Nizu had just informed me that my class was having a talent show, live on TV next week. We have to show the world that even if they are heroes in training, they are still kids and can have fun, were his exact words. So now, I was on my way, 10 minutes late, I might add, to class to inform them about it so they could prepare. I opened the classroom door to find utter chaos. Ida was trying to calm everyone down, Bakugo was shouting at everyone while his hands sparked, and Mina, Denki, Zero, and Izuku were all sitting in the corner of the room. Upon closer inspection, I noticed Mina and Denki were talking and not realizing that Izuku was on the brink of a panic attack, with Zero trying to calm him down. My protective instincts kicked in, and I quickly yelled for everyone to be quiet as I ran up to Izuku and pulled him into a hug. I placed his ear to my chest so he could listen to my heartbeat. After a couple of minutes, he finally calmed down. That's when I realized how silent it had become. I looked around and saw that everyone was staring at us. I gave them a harsh glare, aided by my quirk, and they all looked away and returned to their seats, except for Zero. Mina and Denki were hesitant but eventually went to their seats. I had noticed that in the 2.5 weeks since Izuku had been here, he had gotten extremely close with Zero, Mina, and Denki. He showed them emotions, even if it was just a little bit. I also realized that Mina gave him quite a few hugs, and even if he wouldn't admit it, I knew he liked them. I could tell he was touch-starved, so it was nice to see him receiving some affection. With Denki, I noticed he often sat extra close to Izuku and Mina, whether he had an arm around their shoulders or waist. Not a ship, it's platonic. As for Zero, it was as if they couldn't stay away from each other, they were always in the same room, and you could rarely find them apart. The way they looked at each other made me almost 100% certain that Zero and Izuku had a crush on each other. I looked at Zero and could tell he wanted to comfort Izuku, so I called him over. Zero, come here, please. He walked over without hesitation. I handed Izuku over to him, and he wrapped him in a hug. "You can sit with him while I tell the class about my announcement," I said as I walked to the front of the class. Third-person POV. Shiro sat in Izuku's seat and placed Izuku on his lap. Izuku didn't seem to mind, hiding his face in Shiro's chest while Shiro rubbed his back and played with his hair. Izuku loved it and appreciated the affection he was receiving. He looked almost asleep, but he was very much awake. Even if he seemed calm on the outside, he still had his guard up. After every panic attack, he was always on high alert and overthinking, but for now, he decided to listen to Aizawa. Next week, there will be a talent show. You can sing, dance, play an instrument, or whatever. You don't have to participate if you don't want to. Any questions? Aizawa asked. Mina raised her hand and spoke only when she received a nod from Aizawa. Can we work in groups? Yes, Aizawa stated in his usual monotone. Any more questions? Uraraka raised her hand. What does the winner get? Aizawa sighed. The winner gets to perform again if they wish to. Now, any more questions? No one raised their hand. Good. Now you have the rest of the week off to practice. You can talk among yourselves until the bell, then you're free to do what you want. Don't bother me, Aizawa stated as he crawled into his sleeping bag and laid down on the floor, facing the wall. It was silent for a good minute before the class erupted with silent cheers as they began to talk among themselves. Mina and Denki came over and started talking to Shiro quietly, trying not to disturb Izuku. After about 5 minutes, Izuku got uncomfortable and sat up on Shiro's lap, stretching with a little yawn. A loud "ah" was heard from his left, so he turned to see Mina, who was sitting on his desk. That was so cute. I think I just died. Denki, Shiro, did you see that? Oh my gosh, please tell me you saw that. Mina squealed. Izuku turned to his right to Shiro and tilted his head in confusion. Shiro blushed and chuckled at Izuku's puzzled expression. Your yawn was adorable, Izuku. You know how Mina gets with cute things, Shiro said, looking Izuku right in the eyes. Izuku blushed and glanced down at his lap. Mina jumped down from the table and crouched in front of Izuku next to Shiro's chair. What are you going to do for the talent show? Or are you not participating? She asked excitedly, her big smile brightening the room. I was thinking about singing a song, Izuku replied softly, just loud enough for them to hear. OMG, really? Mina exclaimed, a bit too loudly. Izuku flinched, and Mina quickly apologized. It's fine. What are you all going to do? Izuku asked, looking at his friends. Well, I'm going to dance with some of the girls, Mina informed him. I'm not going to do anything, Denki said casually. What? Why not, Denks? Mina asked, a pout forming on her lips. I just don't feel like it, and I wouldn't want to take the spotlight off you, would I? Denki teased. Mina huffed, no, I guess not. Izuku smiled slightly as he watched his two best friends before turning to Shiro. What are you going to do? He asked, tilting his head to the side. I'm not sure, Shiro replied, looking at Izuku. Well, do you know how to sing? Izuku asked. Yeah. Then why don't we sing a song together? Maybe a Spanish song. I know you speak Spanish, and when I was with the league, they made me learn some other languages, Izuku suggested, his nerves showing. Sure, Shiro said with a smile, easing Izuku's worries. Izuku nodded, blushing as he hid his face in Shiro's chest again. Shiro thought Izuku looked cute, his caring expression revealing how much he cherished him. Shiro loved Izuku, having fallen for him in the short time they had known each other. Izuku felt the same but was unsure of how to navigate these new feelings. On the day of the show, nearly everyone had performed except for Shiro and Izuku, they were the last to go on stage. Mina and Denki stood by their side for support. Okay, that performance was amazing. Now we have Hanta Shiro and Izuku, who will be singing together. Please come up to the stage. Present Mike announced through the microphone. Shiro and Izuku walked onto the stage, taking a quick glance at their friends cheering them on. They smiled and prepared to sing. As Izuku began to sing, he moved slowly to the front of the stage. You've been dressing up the truth. I've been dressing up for you. Then you leave me in this room. Pour a glass and bite my tongue. You say I'm the only one. If it's true, then why you running, boo. Izuku walked around Shiro as Shiro waited for his turn to sing. If you're really being honest, if you really want this, ooh. Why you acting like a stranger? What's with your behavior, ooh? Say my name, say my name. If you love me, let me hear you. Say my name, say my name. I am dying to believe you. As they continued, the crowd cheered them on, and when they finished, the applause was overwhelming. They bowed and left the stage to meet their friends, who were still cheering. Mina and Denki rushed to them, giving them a massive hug. You guys did so well. You sang that song perfectly, you sounded amazing. Mina gushed. They both smiled and blushed at the compliment. Thank you, they said in unison, exchanging a happy glance. Later, Izuku said, we need to see who won. He grabbed Shiro's hand and led him to a room where all the contestants were, with Mina and Denki following closely behind. They found a spot at the back of the room and sat on the floor. Shiro sat first and pulled Izuku onto his lap while Mina and Denki chatted excitedly about who they thought would win. Feeling a bit uncomfortable with the attention, Izuku buried his head into Shiro's neck, and Shiro held him close. I may be an ex-villain, but I have always hated when people stare at me. I feel judged, and being an ex-villain means that most people tend to dislike me. They usually keep their distance, too scared to come too close in case I lash out, which I would never do. Despite having left that life behind, many are still wary. I was pulled from my thoughts when the door swung open to reveal Dad and Papa. Just to clarify, Dad is Aizawa, and Papa is Mike. They adopted Izuku a week after they found him. Hello there, little listeners. We have come to announce the winner of the show. Can we get a drum roll, please? Papa said enthusiastically. The sound of people slapping their knees to create a drumming noise filled the room, and I had to resist the urge to cover my ears. Hanta Shiro and Izuku Aizawa have won the concert. Let's all give them a round of applause, Papa continued. The whole room erupted with cheers and whistles, while I sat there in shock for a moment. When Papa said, Izuku Aizawa, did that mean I had been officially adopted by them? Once everyone calmed down, they returned to their seats to wait for Shiro and my last performance. Shiro and I went to get ready for our final song. Once we finished, Izuku and Shiro held hands in the middle of the stage and bowed before walking off. After leaving the stage, they said goodbye to Mina and Denki and started heading back to the dorms. They walked in comfortable silence, but Shiro had a question. Do you want to hang out in my room? Shiro asked nervously. Sure, Izuku nodded. Once they arrived at Shiro's room, they made themselves comfortable. Shiro sat on his bed with his legs crossed, and Izuku took a seat in Shiro's computer chair. It was silent for about 5 minutes, a comfortable silence neither wanted to break, but they both knew they had to talk. They liked each other but didn't know where to start until Izuku finally spoke up. So. You did really well when we sang together. You sang perfectly, Izuku mentioned quietly while spinning in the computer chair slightly. Really? Thanks, Aizu. You did great too. I do have a question about the song we sang, you know, the first one. Shiro said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. Go ahead. Okay, well, the first song was kind of a love song, right? I just wanted to know if you had a crush on anyone, Shiro asked, growing more nervous as he spoke. Izuku shifted in his seat, debating whether to tell him that his crush was actually him, sitting right in front of him. He decided to be honest and mentally prepared himself for rejection. Izuku took a deep breath before looking down at his lap. Actually. I do have a crush, he said, fiddling with his fingers and avoiding eye contact. Shiro perked up slightly. Really? Who? Actually, it's you. I like you a lot, and I didn't want to say anything because I've never had friends before, and I didn't want to ruin our friendship. I totally get it if you don't want to be my friend anymore because, you probably don't even like me, so I can leave if you want, Izuku rambled, only to be cut off by Shiro wrapping his arms around him. He didn't even realize he had tears running down his face until a sob slipped through his lips. He hugged Shiro back as he sobbed quietly. After a few minutes, he calmed down, and Shiro pulled back to sit in front of him, holding one of his hands. Aizu? Shiro asked. Softly, but Izuku didn't budge. Baby? Shiro tried again, using a pet name to get his attention. I'm not going to leave you. I really like you too, okay? Shiro said gently. Izuku looked up at Shiro, who smiled softly at him. He searched Shiro's face for any signs of insincerity, but there were none. Promise you won't leave? He asked quietly. Shiro nodded. Izuku held out one of his pinkies. Promise? Shiro smiled at his cuteness and linked his pinky with Izuku's. Promise, he said softly but firmly. It was silent again before Shiro found the courage to speak. Aizu? The boy in question turned to him. Will you be my boyfriend? Shiro asked nervously, even though they had already confessed, it was still nerve-wracking. Izuku was quiet for a moment before he tackled Shiro into a hug, whispering a yes into his ear. After that, they cuddled on Shiro's bed, both happy with the outcome of the day's events. It's been 2.5 months since Izuku was captured, 8 weeks since he met his classmates, and 4 weeks since he started dating Shiro. They hadn't told anyone about their relationship, but they weren't trying to hide it either, they just didn't want the attention, aside from Denki and Mina, who were in the know. Currently, everyone in Class 1A was busy packing their bags for a special hero camp to train their quirks. However, 4 students were not packing: Mina, Denki, Shiro, and Izuku. The 2 couples were cuddled up on the couch, watching a movie together. Their peaceful moment was interrupted when some classmates entered the common room, chatting loudly and completely oblivious to the movie. Izuku, feeling frustrated, decided to speak up. Can you all be quiet? You're so loud that you didn't even notice we were trying to watch a movie, he exclaimed, remaining on the couch as Shiro hugged him tighter to calm him down. The room fell silent, and the classmates made their way over to the couches, sitting on the floor and other couches to join in on the movie. However, Lita stood in front of the couch where the 4 friends were seated. You must apologize this instant. You cannot speak to your fellow classmates like that. Why are you even watching movies? You should be packing for the training camp tomorrow, and why are you all laying on each other? Lita's hands gestured animatedly as he spoke, but Izuku had had enough of Lita's speech and stood up. First off, I didn't hear you trying to keep them quiet when you walked in, so why are you lecturing us? We were trying to watch a movie before you all came in. And we packed about 3 hours ago, so why don't you just sit down so we can finish the movie? Izuku's voice was firm, and he took a breath after his outburst. Shiro, Mina, and Denki couldn't help but snicker at the situation. Lita, taken aback, chose to sit next to Todoroki instead. Just as Izuku was about to sit down, Uraraka stood up. Hey, you can't just say whatever you want to him and call us loud, she began, but Izuku interrupted her. Just be quiet. Why can't anyone in this class be quiet? At this point, I'd rather jump off a cliff than listen to any more whining. Your opinion doesn't matter to me, so just sit down. Turning back to his friends, he noticed they were laughing but also concerned. If I stay here any longer, someone is going to call the police because I'm going to lose my mind. I can't deal with this right now. I'm heading to my room. With that, he turned and left. Mina and Denki exchanged glances before addressing the rest of the class. What was that? Don't think we didn't see the looks you were giving Izuku. You were all being loud and obnoxious. If you had just been quiet, we could have enjoyed the movie. And Lita, if you had just sat down, we would have had fun. Just be mindful of your surroundings, you're heroes in training. If you were that loud in public, you could attract unwanted attention. The room fell silent as everyone processed what had just happened. Mina and Denki quietly got up and headed down the hall to the elevator, planning to check on Izuku, but Shiro had already gone, so they decided to wait until the morning. A few minutes later, Shiro made his way to Izuku's room. Upon hearing sobbing from inside, he felt a surge of anger toward his classmates for making Izuku cry. He approached the door, which was slightly open, and pushed it open gently, stepping inside. What he saw was not a pleasant sight. Izuku had stumbled into his room, tears streaming down his face, struggling to catch his breath. Izuku got off the floor with shaky legs and made his way to the bathroom, where he found his razor hidden under the sink. He placed the blade on the edge of the sink before rolling up his sleeve to reveal dozens of scars scattered across his wrists. Finding a clear patch of skin, he took the blade and pressed it against his wrist. As he felt a sharp sting, he watched as blood trickled down his arm into the sink. The sensation brought him a momentary sense of relief, and he continued, lost in his thoughts. A particularly deep cut snapped him from his daze, causing him to drop the blade into the sink and stumble back into his room. He fell to the ground, overwhelmed with emotion, as blood continued to flow from his arms. He felt too weak to get up and tend to his wounds. Just then, he heard his door creak open but was too consumed by his feelings to look up. Shiro walked into Izuku's room and found him sobbing on the floor, cuts visible on his arms. Acting quickly, Shiro rushed over to inspect Izuku's wounds. He went to get a cloth to clean up the blood and some bandages. Once he had cleaned and wrapped Izuku's arms, he carefully picked him up and sat him on the bed. Izuku had stopped crying, his face now emotionless. Shiro felt a wave of fear wash over him. He had just seen his boyfriend in such a vulnerable state, and now Izuku was staring blankly into space. Who wouldn't be scared? Shiro sat next to Izuku on the bed, holding one of his hands for comfort. The silence was eventually broken by Izuku's quiet voice. "I'm sorry," he stuttered. Shiro looked at him, startled by the sudden sound, but his expression softened with concern. He pulled Izuku into a gentle hug, whispering reassuring words into his ear. After a while, Shiro laid down on the bed with Izuku resting on top of him. Shiro asked softly. "Yeah." Izuku replied in a whisper. "Why did you do it?" Shiro continued, trying to convey that he wasn't angry. Izuku shifted slightly, looking at the wall while Shiro ran his hand through his hair, waiting for an answer. "Well, I just got really annoyed with them, you know. Lita is always on my case about one thing or another, whether it's my uniform, the way I walk, or even my neutral expression. It feels like he's always judging me, and I hate it. I've had enough criticism from people for the last 12 years. And Uraraka, she keeps trying to invade my space, and when I tell her to back off, she spreads rumors about me. Everyone treats me like I'm beneath them. I know I'm an ex-villain, but why does everyone have to hate me? I got angry at them for bothering me, and then I got mad at myself for letting it affect me. I felt like I couldn't breathe, so I did the one thing that always helped. I cut," Izuku explained, his voice trembling. Shiro listened intently, processing Izuku's words before breaking the silence. "You know, you're really cool and strong. We haven't even seen you use your quirk yet. They probably put you down to feel better about themselves because they're jealous. I'm not just saying this to make you feel better, I mean every word. You're perfect and the best boyfriend I could ask for. If Lita, Uraraka, or anyone else gets too much, just tell me or Mina or Denki, and we'll do our best to help you. You have us now, and we aren't going anywhere, okay?" Shiro reassured him. Izuku stared at Shiro for a moment before leaning in and kissing him softly. The kiss started gently but grew more passionate. After a few moments, they broke apart, both gasping for air. That night, Shiro and Izuku cuddled together, feeling even more connected than before. Izuku felt a weight lift off his shoulders from venting to his boyfriend. They spent the night talking about their upcoming camp before falling asleep in each other's arms. The next morning, Izuku woke up to the sound of his alarm. He sat up and leaned over Shiro to turn it off, then stretched and looked down at him, who was still asleep. It was 6:30 a.m., so Izuku decided to let him sleep a little longer while he got ready. He carefully climbed over Shiro and headed to the bathroom to take a shower. After brushing his teeth, he hopped in, washing up before wrapping a towel around his waist and stepping out. He re-bandaged his cuts before returning to his room, where Shiro was still asleep, cuddled under the blankets. Izuku thought about how cute he looked. He grabbed one of Shiro's hoodies, which was quite big on him, and some basketball shorts. After getting dressed, he straddled Shiro's lap and shook him gently, but he didn't budge. So, Izuku decided to try something different. He leaned down and placed soft kisses from Shiro's neck up to his lips, which quickly roused him from sleep. "I'm sorry, Hanta, you weren't waking up, but it looks like you have a problem now," Izuku said with a quiet giggle, noticing Hanta's confusion. To ease his embarrassment, he added softly, "It's okay, Hanta, I'll help if you want. I did cause the problem." "Are you sure?" Hanta asked, placing his hands on Izuku's hips. "Yep, I'm sure. We just won't go too far," Izuku replied, leaning down to kiss him gently. In a third-person perspective, Izuku continued to engage with Shiro, sharing a moment of closeness as they explored their feelings for each other. Shiro trailed kisses from Izuku's lips down to his neck, leaving soft marks that expressed their affection. As they shared this NTMT moment, Izuku breathed out Hanta's name, feeling overwhelmed by the emotions of the experience. Shiro, caught up in the bliss, encouraged Izuku to let go and enjoy the moment together. Afterward, Shiro caught his breath and complimented the experience, while Izuku leaned against him, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over him. Shiro gently rubbed Izuku's back and offered to help him clean up, assuring him that he could just rest. Time passed, and they arrived at the bus, hand in hand. Aizawa looked tired, while Mina and Denki seemed frustrated with the chaos of getting everyone settled. Lita was trying to maintain order, but Izuku had had enough of the arguing. "Come on, not this again," he said, drawing everyone's attention. "Lita, just let everyone sit where they want. We could be on our way to camp by now. If you can't even sit in a seat without arguing, how are you going to handle a villain attack?" His words silenced the group. Sighing, Izuku pulled Shiro onto the bus. Aizawa thanked him, and Izuku nodded with a small smile, using his quirk to create a flask of coffee for Aizawa before heading to the back of the bus with Shiro. As the journey continued, Izuku leaned on Shiro's shoulder, feeling tired from the early start. It wasn't long before he fell asleep. After a few hours, the class arrived at a scenic stop by a cliff. Shiro woke Izuku as the students began to stretch their legs. They soon encountered three girls who introduced themselves as the Wild Pussycats, explaining that they owned the land and pointed out the summer camp at the base of the mountain. Uraraka expressed her annoyance at the stop, and Tsuyu hinted at the reason for it. Kaminari nervously suggested they head back to the bus, and Mandalay informed them that they had until 12:30 to reach the camp for lunch. Before anyone could react, Aizawa stopped them, but Izuku shrugged it off. He climbed over the railing and jumped down, landing safely. The other students protested, but Izuku was unfazed. "I like him. Come on, kids, he has the right idea," Mandalay said excitedly, encouraging the students to use their quirks to reach the camp in time. Izuku was already in the forest, fighting the creatures that Pixie Bob had created, with Shiro, Mina, and Denki following closely behind. He was thrilled to finally have the chance to fight after months of basic training. About 2.5 hours later, Izuku emerged from the depths of the forest, with Mina, Shiro, and Denki not far behind. He had taken on most of the challenges, feeling satisfied with the opportunity to prove himself after a long PRD of training. Izuku went straight to Aizawa and sat by his feet, leaning slightly against his legs. Aizawa smiled gently and reached down to pat Izuku's hair. Denki and Mina sat on the ground in the middle of the open space, waiting for the class, while Shiro leaned against Izuku's side. "You guys did better than I thought, but you were supposed to stay with the class, so next time, please stick together," Mandalay said happily. Mina and Denki nodded, while Izuku mumbled something under his breath, leaning back a bit more against Aizawa's legs. Aizawa chuckled lightly, and Shiro held a hand to his mouth to stifle his laughter, as they were closest to Izuku and had heard what he said. "What was that?" Mandalay asked curiously. Izuku sighed. "I said the class told me they didn't need my help, and where are they now?" "In the forest, struggling with some creatures that Pixie Bob made, probably wishing they had help." Aizawa chuckled again, while Shiro, Mina, and Denki snickered in the background. The pussycats frowned. "Why wouldn't they want your help?" "You did better than any of them, surely they've seen you fight before," Pixie Bob said, surprised. Izuku sighed again. "I'm assuming you already know I'm an ex-villain. It doesn't matter if I was forced into it or not, I still was, so the class dislikes me, except for a handful of people, my boyfriend," he gestured to Shiro, "my best friends," he gestured to Mina and Denki, Kirishima and Todoroki. "They only sometimes talk to me, but everyone else treats me poorly. Plus, I had quirk restraints on until a week ago, so they haven't even seen me use my quirks yet," Izuku explained plainly. The pussycats frowned further, as did the others present. Before anything more could be said, the rest of the class emerged from the forest, covered in dirt, bruises, and cuts, looking exhausted. Katsuki was holding his wrists, Lita was limping, Uraraka had a hand over her mouth, looking like she might be sick, Tsuyu had her tongue hanging out, Aoyama was hunched over, and Mineta had a small injury on his head. Momo held her head, while some others knelt on the ground, their legs giving out. "You said it would only be like 3 hours, Uraraka whined. "Guess we timed it on how long it would take us," Mandalay said unapologetically, slightly put out by what Izuku had told them. "You guys did better than I thought you would, but you need to work on your teamwork. Other than that, you all did great, especially the 4 of you," Pixie Bob exclaimed, pointing to Mina, Denki, Shiro, and a bored-looking Izuku, who was still by Aizawa's feet. She licked her lips before playfully pouncing on them. "I call dibs on these kittens." Mina and Denki squealed and hid behind Izuku and Aizawa, who looked like they wanted to either sleep or disappear, probably both. Shiro just smiled at his friend's antics. "Hey, who's that kid over there?" Kirishima asked, successfully turning Pixie Bob's attention to the boy. "Oh, this little guy. He's my cousin's son, he lives with us now." "Come on, Kota, don't be shy, say hi," Mandalay introduced, ushering the little boy forward. Kota looked away from the big group of students, instead focusing on Izuku. He had heard what Izuku said and was intrigued by him. Feeling eyes on him, Izuku turned and looked at the boy, tilting his head in confusion. Izuku broke eye contact and looked up at Aizawa, tugging on his breaths to get his attention. Aizawa looked down at Izuku with a questioning expression. Izuku pointed to the boy, whose attention was now on Kirishima as he introduced himself. Aizawa looked over just in time to see Kota punch Kirishima, saying something about disliking wannabe heroes. Kota glanced back at Izuku, who covered his mouth to stifle a laugh as Lita went to Kirishima's aid. The corners of Kota's lips tugged upward slightly before he put on a scowl and walked into the building. Aizawa cleared his throat loudly to get his students' attention. "Go get your stuff off the bus. Once your bags are in your rooms, we'll have dinner in the cafeteria. After that, you can bathe and sleep. Tomorrow, training starts early, so you'd better get a move on," Aizawa explained tiredly, patting Izuku's head as he stood up from his place on the ground. Everyone had finished eating, and Class 1A went to bathe. They were all sitting in the hot springs, having light conversation while relaxing after a long day. Shiro and Izuku, however, stood face to face. Shiro looked over all of Izuku's scars, tracing them softly. "You know, your scars. I think they're appealing," Shiro whispered. "Really?" Izuku whispered back, searching Shiro's face for any sign of disgust or lies, but he found only gentleness and awe. "Definitely," Shiro replied, tracing a particularly large scar on Izuku's shoulder. It was a burn mark, but this one wasn't from Izuku's time with the villains, it was from his childhood bully, almost like a starburst. Izuku gently pulled Shiro's hands away and initiated a hug between them, whispering his appreciation into Shiro's ear. Shiro happily hugged back, tracing invisible shapes on Izuku's back as Izuku peered over Shiro's shoulder, holding him tightly. Everyone was just relaxing and talking among themselves, except for one person standing in front of the big wooden wall that separated the boys from the girls. Can you guess who that person is? Mineta was starting to pull the purple ball from his head and climb up the wall, but Izuku quickly let go of Shiro, mumbling a quick, "Be right back." He got out of the hot springs and sped over to Mineta, grabbing his leg and pulling him down from the wall, slamming him onto the ground. The purple-haired boy hit the floor with a thump, turning the attention of the other boys to him. "What do you think you're doing?" Izuku growled. "Oh come on, that was my chance. I need to see the girls." Mineta exclaimed, practically drooling as he spoke, clearly imagining what the girls would look like. "No, I don't, because I'm not a perverted creep like you. The only person I would even remotely look at in that way is my boyfriend. If you think I'm going to let you peek over that wall and see my best friend and any of her friends, then you are completely wrong," Izuku seethed. Lida opened his mouth to respond, but a fierce glare from Izuku made him stop in his tracks and fall silent for the moment. Picking Mineta up, Izuku walked into the building and threw him against a wall next to his dad. "That little brat was trying to peek over the wall to see the girls, so here. If I look at him anymore, I'm going to lose it," Izuku grumbled to his dad, crossing his arms with a huff. Aizawa gave a proud grin. "It's all right, kid. Go and enjoy yourself, hang out with your boyfriend. I will deal with that brat," Aizawa said calmly. "Thanks, Dad," Izuku replied, turning towards the door. "Oh, and Izuku," Aizawa called out. Izuku turned back towards his dad. "Yeah." Aizawa tossed a small bag at Izuku, who caught it easily. Looking inside the bag, Izuku nearly choked on his saliva. He gaped at his father in disbelief, his face burning from embarrassment. Aizawa chuckled before dragging Mineta away, leaving behind a flustered Izuku. Izuku looked down at the bag in his hand, which contained a small bottle of lubricant, condoms, and a note that read, "You don't have to use the condoms, but I thought for your first time you might want to. It's up to you, though. Have fun. Love from your dad's, winky face." There was a winky face at the end, which made Izuku mortified. His face burning, Izuku quickly closed the bag and rushed to his room to hide it in his bedside table. This is going to be a long trip, Izuku thought before heading back out to meet his boyfriend at the hot springs. Class 2A woke up early, and by early, I mean 5 a.m. early. So, to say they were all tired was an understatement. Right now, all of Class 2A was training. Bakugo Katsuki had his hands in boiling hot water to expand his sweat glands. He kept his hands in the water, then pulled them out to create continuous explosions. Todoroki Shoto was alternating between ice and fire, regulating the temperature of the water to get accustomed to the cold while working on controlling his flames. He was training to hopefully someday be able to use both at once. Shiro Hanta was continuously producing tape to increase its capacity and improve its tensile strength and shooting speed. Kaminari Denki was using his quirk against a high-voltage battery to help him handle larger amounts of electricity. Fumikage Tokoyami was in a dark cave trying to control dark shadow even in the dark. Tenya Ida was doing hardcore long-distance running to improve his leg strength and stamina. Tsuyu Azui was working on all the muscles in her body, including her tongue. Mina Ashido was continuously making acid to increase her skin's durability. Izuku Aizawa had 4 quirks, but he could only use 2 of them. The others required him to get hurt to activate. That being said, he was practicing making weapons with his green flame and controlling it to do whatever he wanted. He also practiced creating different objects with his craft quirk. After a long day of training, the group was told they had to make their own food, curry. After some protests and groans, they finally got to work. Todoroki helped everyone light the stoves with his fire. Bakugo tried to help but ended up causing a small explosion. After a while, everyone sat down to enjoy their meal. Izuku, who was sitting with Shiro, Mina, and Denki, heard Mandalay call for Kota and looked up just in time to see the boy walking into the forest. Curious, Izuku got up, telling Shiro that he would be back before following Kota into the woods. Izuku made his way up the mountain to a cliff where he found Kota sitting on the edge with his legs hanging off. "What are you doing up here all alone?" Izuku asked quietly, sitting next to the boy. "I wanted to be away from all the wannabe heroes," Kota replied. "If you don't mind me asking, why do you hate heroes so much?" Izuku inquired, looking over at him. Kota didn't respond, continuing to gaze into the distance. Izuku had spoken to the PP cats earlier and learned why Kota hated heroes. His parents had died trying to save some civilians when he was just 5 years old, and now at 8, he must feel abandoned. Izuku understood why he was bitter. "You know," Izuku began after a few moments of silence, "I was forced to be a villain before my adoptive dad found me and brought me in. My dad saved my life, he's my hero." Kota looked over, intrigued. "Why were you forced to be a villain?" Izuku shrugged. "I was quirkless, and they wanted a toy to play with," he said in a monotone voice. Kota's eyes widened. Izuku continued, "I was tormented my whole life for being quirkless. My childhood best friend bullied me daily, even though we had agreed to be a hero duo before I came out as quirkless. Anyway, I was kidnapped and experimented on. I had 4 quirks forced on me, and there was nothing I could do. I was trained to control my quirks to perfection. I won't go into details, you're just a kid." He finished, looking up at the starry night sky. "Why didn't you try to escape?" Kota whispered. "Oh, trust me, I did. I lost count after the 50th attempt. They always seemed to find me. Plus, even if I did escape, I had no one and nowhere to go. I would have been lost and alone. I've always had a fear of being alone, so I would rather stay with the villains than be alone, even though they could have killed me," Izuku sighed. It was silent again for a while before Kota moved closer to Izuku as the wind picked up. "I'm sorry you had to go through something traumatic, Kota. But not all heroes are bad. I know you think your parents abandoned you, but they didn't risk their lives for fame. They risked their lives to save another family so they could live a long, happy life. I know that might not seem fair to you, but your parents are true heroes, and I believe that if you want, you can be one too," Izuku said, wrapping an arm around Kota's shoulder to help him keep warm. Kota didn't reply but huddled closer to Izuku, and once again, it was silent. Eventually, Kota fell asleep leaning on Izuku, who carried him all the way down the mountain back to the camp. He handed Kota off to Mandalay after explaining what had happened on the mountain. Mandalay gave Izuku a pat on the shoulder with a smile and a thank you before wandering off to put Kota to bed. By the time Izuku returned, dinner was being cleared up, so he helped clean before Aizawa called them over. "Tomorrow, we will be getting up at the same time as this morning for training. Make sure you get some sleep and don't stay up late." "Now, Izuku, a word please," Aizawa informed. Everyone scurried off to their rooms while Izuku made his way to his dad. "How was today?" Aizawa asked. "It was fun," Izuku answered, avoiding eye contact. "Izuku," Aizawa said, sensing something was off. It was just different, you know. We were training really hard today, but it felt so abnormal." I wasn't getting shouted at if I slipped up or having to dodge knives as part of the training. It was just. Izuku sighed deeply. Strange, he finished, looking down. Aizawa took a small stride forward and embraced his son. It broke his heart that Izuku thought abuse was normal. It's only been a few months, Izuku. It will take time for my normal to be your normal, okay? Aizawa sighed and let Izuku go. Why don't you go to your cabin with Shiro? Maybe you can do something together to relieve some stress, Aizawa said with a teasing grin. Izuku flushed red. Dad, he whined. Aizawa chuckled. Go on, the rooms are soundproof. Have some fun, kid. I'm not judging, he said in a softer tone. Izuku smiled. Thanks, Dad. With that, he made his way to his cabin to find Shiro. Once Izuku finally made it to their cabin, he found his lovely boyfriend lying on their shared bed in shorts and a tank top, reading a book. How can someone look so innocent yet so tempting? Izuku thought as he closed and locked the door, stepping further into the room. Shiro looked up from his book after hearing the door open and close. He stared at Izuku as he walked around the room, taking off his shoes and hoodie, changing into a big t-shirt, and flopping onto the bed, face first, next to Shiro with an exhausted huff. You okay there, love? Shiro asked softly, putting his book on the bedside table before turning to look at Izuku, who had turned onto his back, staring at the ceiling. You want the full truth or a lie? Izuku asked quietly. Full truth if you're alright telling me, Shiro said, sitting up slightly. Izuku sighed. I'm super stressed out right now, and I kind of want to throw myself off a cliff. Not that I can die or anything because of these stupid quirks that have been forced onto me. He sat up and turned to face Shiro. You know earlier when I left during dinner? I followed Koda, and we had a chat. For some odd reason, I opened up to him a little. Nothing too major, but I still did. To a kid. Can you believe it? Izuku threw his hands in the air in exasperation before hiding his face in them. First, please don't say you want to throw yourself off a cliff. And second, so what if you talk to Koda? You opened up, and it's a good thing. Don't stress out about it, okay? Shiro said, taking Izuku's hands off his face and holding them. It's not just that. Training has been stressful too, and I just want some quiet for a while. Is that okay? Of course it is, love, Shiro said lovingly. Izuku moved to straddle Shiro's lap, burying his face in Shiro's neck with his hands wrapped around his waist as Shiro leaned against the headboard, holding Izuku protectively. They enjoyed the warmth and comfort of each other in silence, but Izuku still needed a stress reliever. Izuku began lightly kissing Shiro's neck, with the occasional nibble, not wanting to mark unless Shiro gave him his consent. Shiro tilted his head to the side to give Izuku more room, his own way of telling Izuku it was okay to leave marks. Izuku sked on Shiro's smooth skin on his neck and shoulder, and Shiro sighed in contentment when Izuku found his sweet spot. Izuku pulled back and admired his work, feeling a sense of pride fill his chest as he soothed over the bruised skin with his tongue before sitting up fully in Shiro's lap. You okay? I wasn't too hard, was I? Izuku asked, his need for reassurance rising. It was perfect, Shiro said with a gentle smile. Izuku leaned in and wrapped his arms around Shiro once more, kissing him. It was gentle and loving at first, but soon turned more heated. Shiro liked Izuku's bottom lip for entrance, and Izuku was happy to oblige, parting his lips. Their tongues clashed as they fought for Dems, which Shiro won easily. Eventually, they parted, gasping for air. Shiro leaned their foreheads together, his hands sliding up Izuku's oversized shirt, running up and down his sides lovingly. How far are you comfortable going? Shiro asked, pulling back to look into Izuku's eyes. All the way, Izuku breathed. Are you sure? We don't have to, Shiro said, not wanting to push Izuku. They had been dating for about a month and a half, but they were so comfortable with each other. Shiro wanted this but cared too much for Izuku to rush him if he wasn't ready. Please, Hanta, I want it. I need you so bad, Izuku whined, trying to get some friction. Shoo, it's okay, mi amor, I've got you. Let me take care of you, Shiro said as he carefully adjusted their position, laying Izuku on his back while leaning over him. Shiro leaned down and kissed Izuku again, his hands reaching for the hem of Izuku's shirt and pulling it over his head, breaking the kiss momentarily before continuing. He pulled away to remove his own clothes, leaving Izuku in just his boxers, before climbing back onto the bed to resume their kiss. Izuku's hands gripped the back of Shiro's head, pulling him down to deepen the kiss as Shiro's hands explored Izuku's body. Shiro began to trail soft kisses down Izuku's body, from his lips to his neck, his chest to his stomach, kissing every scar he saw until he was comfortably resting between Izuku's legs. He placed gentle kisses on Izuku's inner thigh, making Izuku feel a mix of pleasure and longing. Izuku was feeling overwhelmed with longing, and while he loved the soft touches, he craved more. Shiro used his fingers to hook the waistband of Izuku's boxers, looking up to seek Izuku's consent. After a moment, Izuku nodded, and Shiro pulled the boxers off completely, causing Izuku to gasp quietly at the sudden chill. Shiro lightly kissed Izuku's skin, enjoying the moment as he continued to explore. He encouraged Izuku to feel comfortable, assuring him that he could hold on to his hair if he needed to. As their connection deepened, Izuku found himself lost in the sensations, urging Shiro to go faster. Shiro, fully engaged in the moment, continued to work his magic, loving the sounds that escaped Izuku's lips. It was clear that both were feeling the intensity of their emotions, and Shiro was equally affected. As Izuku approached his peak, he tried to pull Shiro away, but Shiro gently pushed him back down, wanting to savor every moment. Afterward, Shiro pulled away, smiling at the experience they had just shared. Izuku, still catching his breath, felt a mix of satisfaction and yearning. He wanted more, but he was too shy to voice his desires. Shiro, noticing the change in Izuku's demeanor, asked if he was okay, gently cupping his face to encourage him to speak. Izuku, feeling a blush creeping up his neck, finally admitted, I want to go all the way. Only if you want to. Shiro kissed him softly, reassuring him that he would never push him beyond his comfort. Of course I want to go all the way with you, Shiro said, but if you need to rest, that's okay too. Izuku, feeling emboldened, whispered, please. I need you. Shiro smiled and kissed him again before guiding Izuku back down, both of them feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. As they prepared for the next step, Shiro made sure to check in with Izuku, explaining the importance of communication and consent. Izuku nodded, understanding the system Shiro had laid out for them, and expressed his eagerness to continue. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as they moved forward together, ready to explore their connection further. Shiro smiled and nodded, gently encouraging Izuku to breathe as he adjusted to the new sensation. Breathe, baby, I got you, he said softly. Izuku took a few deep breaths, trying to relax as Shiro began to move again. After a moment, he felt Shiro settle completely, and he focused on calming his breathing. What's your color, baby? Shiro asked, his voice low. Green, Izuku replied, a hint of anxiety in his tone. Shiro moved slowly, pulling back until only the tip remained before pushing back in. Izuku whimpered, feeling a mix of discomfort and something else as he adjusted. Shoo, it's okay, sweetheart. It will feel good soon, I promise. And gradually, it did. With each movement, Izuku began to feel a different kind of warmth spreading through him. You're doing so well, good boy, Shiro praised, feeling Izuku respond to his words. He picked up the pace slightly, ensuring not to rush, allowing Izuku to relax into the rhythm. Hanta, Izuku breathed, you can go faster. Shiro obliged, increasing his speed, and Izuku felt like he was floating, lost in the sensations. He clung to Shiro's shoulders, grounding himself as he begged for more. Where, baby? Shiro teased, pretending not to know. When he hit the right spot, Izuku gasped, overwhelmed with pleasure. Yes. Right there, please. Izuku cried out, completely lost in the moment. Shiro could feel Izuku tightening around him, and he knew they were both nearing their limits. You close, baby? He asked softly. Yes, I'm so close. Please don't stop. Izuku pleaded, his voice filled with urgency. Go on, you can let go. You've been such a good boy for me, Shiro encouraged, leaning in for a kiss. The kiss was interrupted as Izuku lost himself in the moment, overwhelmed by the sensations. Shiro continued to move, riding out the waves of pleasure, gently coaxing Izuku through the experience. He could feel Izuku's sensitivity, and he whispered soothing words, reassuring him as they both approached the edge. Green, Izuku managed to say after a moment of thought. Thank you, sweetheart. Almost there, I promise, Shiro said, kissing him again to distract him from the overwhelming sensations. A few moves later, they both felt the rush of release, and Shiro held Izuku close as they shared the moment. Afterward, Shiro gently cleaned them both up, whispering apologies as he wiped away the remnants of their intimacy. Once they were settled under a blanket, Izuku snuggled deeper into Shiro's embrace. Thank you, Hanta, Izuku whispered, feeling grateful and content. For what? Shiro asked, genuinely curious. For letting me feel like that. It was amazing. I haven't had many good memories in my life until recently, but tonight was definitely my favorite. Since I met you, my life feels worth living again. You and my dads are my heroes, and I'm so thankful for you, Izuku said, his voice trailing off as he began to drift off to sleep. I'll always be by your side, Izuku, no matter what, Shiro promised, feeling a warmth in his heart. Izuku smiled softly before succumbing to sleep. When Izuku woke up, he found himself comfortably nestled against Shiro, feeling warm and safe. He knew he had to get up soon for training, but a nagging feeling in his gut warned him that something might go wrong that day. He pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the warmth of Shiro's embrace. His mind wandered back to the previous night, and he felt his cheeks flush. He couldn't believe what had happened between them. It was the best experience he had ever had, and he hoped they could share it again soon. As he thought about training, he reflected on how much he had mastered his quirks over the past 3 years. He wondered if the League would come for him, wanting their toy back. He had held back during his last mission, not wanting to serve the villains anymore. He was grateful to his dads for saving him from that fate. I was startled from my thoughts when my alarm began to blare. I sat up and leaned over Hanta to turn it off, then slumped over him with a sigh. Are you okay? Hanta whispered tiredly as he pulled me fully on top of him. I jumped slightly, startled by his sudden voice, but melted into his hold. I'm fine, just tired, and my thoughts are quite loud today, I replied, burying my face into his chest. Hanta stroked my hair. I'm sorry. Why don't we get up and go sit with your dad until training starts, he suggested. Okay. I slowly lifted myself off Hanta and stood up, and he did the same. We both showered and changed before leaving our cabin. We made our way to the training grounds, where we found a couple of other students and my dad with the pussycats waiting for the rest of the class. I walked straight up to my dad and hugged him, burying my face into his scarf, not caring that some of my classmates were watching. He said he was tired and that his thoughts are quite loud today, I heard Hanta inform my dad as my dad held me in a tight embrace. After a few minutes, I heard more voices and let go of dad to hug Hanta again. And clingy, I heard my dad mutter before addressing the class. We will be doing something different today. We will be going into the forest. Half of the class will be hiding on the outskirts of the trail, they will be the scarers. Every 3 minutes, one group at a time will go in. There are tags at the far end of the route, your job is to collect them, Aizawa said in his usual bored tone, stuffing his hands into his pockets. Those who are scarers aren't allowed to make physical contact, use your quirks to terrify the others, got it? Mandalay exclaimed excitedly. Everyone agreed, and we all got into pairs. Half the class went into the forest to hide while the other half got ready to enter. Hey, Izu, want to be my partner? Hanta whispered into my ear as I hadn't yet moved from my place, hugging him. I nodded into his chest before finally letting go and standing next to him. From a third-person perspective. Everyone was in place, and the first group had gone in, with the second now waiting for their turn. Mina, Denki, Shiro, and Izuku were all waiting by Aizawa. Izuku wanted to stay close, clutching Shiro's hand while his other hand gripped Aizawa's sleeve. Izuku couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen, and the screams of his classmates getting scared by others weren't helping ease his mind. He flinched every time he heard a scream, clutching harder onto Shiro's hand and Aizawa's sleeve. Izuku, Aizawa said, turning to stand in front of him, though Izuku didn't let go of his sleeve. What's wrong? He continued. Izuku sniffed. I just can't shake the feeling that something bad is going to happen, he admitted, looking up at his dad with slight fear, something Aizawa never wanted to see in his kid's eyes. We're out in the middle of nowhere, kid, nothing is going to happen. You're probably just nervous about going into the forest, Aizawa said, crouching down so he was almost eye level with the greenette. But what if something does happen? My gut is almost never wrong, Izuku stressed. Shiro chimed in before Aizawa could respond. If anything does happen, you're not alone, okay? I will be by your side. Your dad and friends will also be here for you. Try not to worry so much and try to relax a little, Shiro said gently, pulling Izuku into a side hug so he didn't have to let go of his dad's sleeve and kissing the top of his head lovingly. Izuku relaxed a little and nodded, smiling a small smile, one that only the people closest to him got to see. Everyone sat in a comfortable silence. But unfortunately, their peace never seemed to last. There was a scream, but it wasn't like the screams they had heard previously. Someone had shouted, "Fire," at the top of their lungs. Izuku and the rest of the group looked towards the forest. They could see blue flames peeking from above the trees, and Izuku froze. He recognized those flames. They were the same flames that haunted his dreams, the same flames that created half the scars on his body. Those were the Villan Dabi's flames. Suddenly unfrozen, Izuku sped into the forest, filled with determination. The villains had returned, and even if they weren't here for him, they were attacking his classmates. Izuku wasn't a villain anymore, he wasn't a monster. It didn't matter to him that his classmates had often treated him poorly. They were only human, just like him. Izuku was determined to help his classmates and stop the League of Villains once and for all. As Izuku sprinted into the forest, he could hear footsteps behind him but didn't turn around, knowing it was his dad and friends. He kept running until he saw the last pair that entered the forest, Uraraka and Tsu. Tsu was pinned to a tree by her hair, a knife keeping her up. She had sustained some injuries, but luckily they didn't seem too major. Meanwhile, Uraraka was trying and failing to restrain a blonde girl with twin messy buns and a knife in her hand, giggling like a schoolgirl. Izuku instantly recognized her as Toga. After taking a moment to assess the scene in front of them, Izuku summoned his green flame and created a dagger. He snuck up behind Toga, and just as she was about to stab Uraraka, Izuku drove his dagger into her shoulder. Toga dropped the knife and screamed in pain, her hand flying up to cover the wound as Izuku slid the dagger out. Izuku hit a pressure point in Toga's neck, and she fell unconscious. I didn't need your help, you know, Uraraka said suddenly, sounding annoyed. Izuku looked up after tying Toga up with some quirk-canceling cuffs he made and securing her to a tree. He rolled his eyes and looked behind her to see his dad and friends unpinning Tsu from the tree. What's happening? Tsu asked after her release. The League of Villains is back, Izuku stated as he turned to continue down the trail. The what? Uraraka asked. Izuku sighed and continued his way down the trail while explaining. The League of Villains, they're the people that forced my quirks onto me before the heroes captured me. They tortured and trained me for almost 4 years. I tried escaping, but they always found me. Izuku sighed. I found out they put a tracker in my neck, he said, turning to the group and moving the collar of his shirt to reveal a long scar on the side of his neck. The group gasped, except for Shiro, who had caught a glimpse of it the night before. He had considered marking it with love bites but was relieved he hadn't, as that would have been embarrassing. I cut it out before the heroes contained me, so I don't know how they found us, but they're here, and they're most likely coming for me. Just as Izuku finished speaking, more shouts erupted from his classmates. Izuku and Aizawa exchanged a glance before they all sprinted down the path, finding Todoroki and Bakugo. A villain hovered in the air, metal spikes protruding from his teeth. They arrived just in time to see Bakugo charging at the villain, only to be stopped by Todoroki's ice as the spikes nearly struck him. The villain kept repeating, "Have to keep going, have to do my job," his voice sounding strained. Spikes came at Bakugo again, but he dodged, while Todoroki created a wall of ice as they argued about how to defeat the villain. Izuku turned to his dad. "This is a new villain, he wasn't there when I was at the base, but I can defeat him. The spikes are coming from his teeth, and he can maneuver around the terrain with ease. Nobody in this group is fast enough to catch him except me. My strength quirk allows me to run faster, and with all the training I've done, I can defeat him, but I have to be decisive." Izuku rushed, seeking permission to pursue the villain. "Okay, I give you permission, just, be careful," Aizawa replied after a moment. Izuku nodded and then vanished. He reappeared in front of Todoroki and Bakugo. After a brief discussion, Izuku pointed to Aizawa and the others. Todoroki glanced over, then back at Izuku, nodding as he grabbed Bakugo and dragged him along, ignoring Bakugo's protests. "You guys okay?" Aizawa asked when they arrived. "Yes, we're fine, no injuries." Izuku said he had a plan to defeat the villain, Todoroki explained. Before anyone could respond, a loud clanging noise echoed, like metal striking metal. They turned to see Izuku wielding a sword with green flames dancing along the blade, surrounded by the same green flames, standing in a fighting stance about 20 feet from the villain. Spikes shot toward Izuku, but he slid on his knees, slicing through them. With his sword, charging at the villain with incredible speed, he aimed for the villain's head. The metal spikes came at him faster than before, some cutting into his skin, but he pressed on until he was close enough. The group held their breath as they watched Izuku fight, gasping when he, in one powerful swing, defeated the villain. Izuku landed on his feet behind the fallen villain, flicking his sword to rid it of any remnants before it dissipated. He slowly turned to face the group, wincing at their expressions. The girls looked ready to faint, Kaminari and Shiro had wide eyes, Todoroki appeared shocked, Bakugo looked furious with a hint of fear, and Aizawa wore a mixture of relief and pride. Shiro was the first to react, rushing over to check if Izuku was okay, inspecting him for injuries and finding only torn clothes. Looking up at him questioningly, Shiro asked, "Healing quirk?" "Yeah," Izuku replied quietly. "Do you hate me now?" he asked, looking away. Shiro's eyes widened. "What? No, of course not. You did what you had to do. Even heroes have to make tough choices sometimes, it's part of the job." He cupped Izuku's face, making him meet his gaze. "I promise I don't hate you." He then pressed a gentle kiss to Izuku's lips before taking his hand. "Come on, kids, we have to find the rest of the class," Aizawa's voice broke the silence that had enveloped them. Their next encounter with a villain occurred halfway back to camp as they decided to cut through the forest for a quicker route. "Hey guys. Where's Bakugo?" Uraraka asked, sounding nervous. Izuku whipped around, realizing Bakugo was missing. "Nice trick, isn't it?" a voice called out. Everyone looked up to see a man perched in a tree, holding an ocean blue marble. "Compress," Izuku said with a small grin. "Ah, Izuku, my child. Long time no see. How have you been?" Compress jumped down to land in front of the group, ignoring the shocked expressions of those behind Izuku. "I've been alright. After the capture, I was adopted, and I made some friends. I even have a boyfriend, Izuku announced proudly, lifting his and Shiro's intertwined hands to show compress. Shiro didn't seem bothered and nodded in acknowledgement. I'm glad you finally got out of that place. You didn't deserve what they did to you, Compress said, sadness lacing his voice. It's fine, Compress. Hey, can we have Katsuki back now? We need to find the rest of the class and stop the villains, Izuku said, pointing to the marble still in Compress's grasp. Oh, sure. I just wanted to scare your friends, Compress said as he released Bakugo from the marble. What was that? Bakugo questioned once he was free. More importantly, why are you talking to a villain like he's your friend? Uraraka exclaimed. Izuku sighed, rubbing his head as a headache began to form. Compress is like an older brother to me. When I was hurt and couldn't move, he helped me clean my wounds, fed me, and comforted me after nightmares. He's not just a friend, he's family, and he's not a villain, he was cut off by Aizawa. Compress is an undercover hero. Exactly. So stop complaining and let's go take down some real villains, Izuku said, continuing the walk back to camp with Compress and Shiro in tow. What are you waiting for? Go. Aizawa urged. They all hurried off to catch up. Problem children, Aizawa muttered as he followed. The group of heroes and students finally made it back to camp, only to find Mandalay and the other PP cats knocked out, thrown to the side with Dabi, Shigaraki, and Muscular surrounding the students, likely waiting for Izuku and his group to show up. Everyone get down, he whispered, and everyone lowered into a crouch. Izuku's mind instantly went into analysis mode, forming a plan. Compress, can you go to the villains and tell them that you couldn't find us, then wait for my signal? Izuku turned to Mina. When I call out to you, I need you to throw acid at Dabi to distract him. Once he is distracted, Denki, I need you to electrocute him, but don't use all your power. Katsuki, Todoroki, you two can deal with Krusty. Just be careful, if he touches you with all 5 fingers, he will disintegrate you. Why would I listen to you? Katsuki questioned angrily. Because you're trying to mend our friendship, right? So help defeat this guy, and then you're forgiven, okay? Izuku said, getting irritated. Fine, he huffed. Uraraka, Tsu, I need you to get our classmates out of here, find help, and call the police and heroes, Izuku instructed, then held up his hand. Don't even try arguing, or I will pull you out there with me and throw you at Dabi. You know what he would do? Burn you. How do you think I got these? He asked, rolling up his sleeve to show his burn marks. Uraraka paled and nodded. Good, Izuku said. Dad? What do you need, kid? You see the big dude with muscles on the outside of his arms? That's Muscular. He's really strong, and I need your help to erase his quirks while I fight him. I also need you to keep an eye on the others and do the same for them if they need it, Izuku rushed, seeing the villains get closer and more irritated. Anything you need, kid, Aizawa replied immediately, noticing the stress building on his son's face. Anything I can help with, Aizu? Shiro asked from beside Izuku. Yes, actually, he turned to look at Shiro. When the villains have been knocked out, can you use your tape to tie them up with the strongest tape you can make? Can you do that? Of course I can, he replied. Good, one more thing, stay alive. You too. I'll be fine, I can't die, remember? Regenerative healing and everything, Izuku deadpanned. Still, humor me, will ya? Sure, I promise. Good. Right, everyone get ready. This might get messy, Izuku said, determination set in his eyes. The plan was set, and everyone was ready to complete their assigned tasks. Let's just hope nothing goes wrong. Compress walked out of the forest and approached the villains, acting as he normally did in front of them to avoid messing up Izuku's plan. I couldn't find the experiment and his friends. Sorry, boss, Compress stated unapologetically, rolling a marble around his fingers. What do you mean you couldn't find them? You had one job. Ugh, whatever. Maybe if I take out some of his classmates, they'll hear their screams and, Shigaraki was cut off by Dabi. Boss? What? Shigaraki snapped, whipping his head in Dabi's direction. The kids are gone, he stated, pointing to where Class 2A had been cornered, only to find them missing. What? Where did they go? Why weren't you keeping an eye on them? Shigaraki screamed at Dabi, ranting about how useless he was while Dabi just stood there looking bored. From the bushes, Izuku snickered quietly as he watched Shigaraki rage. Uraraka and Sue had already snuck over once the villains were distracted and got the knocked-out heroes and students away to find help. Okay, I need everyone to try their best but don't push yourselves, and don't get hurt, got it? Izuku whispered to everyone. They all nodded. Good, I'll go out first. Wait for my signal. Without waiting any longer, Izuku stepped out. Wait, what's the signal? Mina whispered. Just pay attention, you'll know it when you see it, Aizawa whispered back. Are you done with your complaining yet? Izuku shouted over Shigaraki, and all their heads snapped over to him. Izuku smiled sweetly at them. Hey, boys. You. Shigaraki shouted, pointing an accusing finger at Izuku, who raised an eyebrow. You were supposed to take out the heroes and then come back to us. Why'd you cut your tracker out? Do you know how mad Sensei was? He made himself unstable because of you, he shouted at Izuku, taking a few steps forward. Izuku dropped his smile. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess Sensei wasn't able to take my absence, or maybe it was the poison I slipped him just before we left for our mission that day. He's dead now, right? How sad, Izuku fake pouted. Shigaraki gasped. You're going to pay for killing him, he said angrily. Izuku smirked. Let's get down to business then, shall we? Izuku said before dropping his act. He created a sword and held it in front of him, pointing it toward Shigaraki as green flames danced around the blade. Which one of you am I going to take down first? Izuku pointed his blade at each of the villains. Once he reached Compress, he winked before suddenly charging toward Muscular. That's the signal, go. Aizawa exclaimed as he jumped out from the bushes, followed closely by his students. Mina shot acid at Dabi, burning his jacket, which distracted him enough for Denki to use a surge of electricity to knock him unconscious. Shiro was quick to tie him up with the strongest tape he could make. They could hear Katsuki's explosions and turned just in time to see him shooting an explosion at Shigaraki, knocking him over, although he got up again quite quickly. Todoroki shot ice at Shigaraki, but it was disintegrated when he touched it with 5 fingers. Shigaraki went to touch Katsuki when he didn't see it coming. Bakugo, watch out! Mina screamed from across the field, but it was too late. Shigaraki had put a hand on his chest, however, nothing happened. Oh, you are good, Eraserhead. The group looked over to where they last saw their teacher, his hair was up in the air, and his eyes were glowing red. Bakugo smirked. Die, he shouted, lifting his hand and unleashing an explosion right in Shigaraki's face, sending him flying in the direction of Izuku's fight. Izuku was currently dodging all of Muscular's attacks, managing to land a few hits himself when he heard a loud explosion followed by screams. He dodged another attack and turned just in time to step out of the way as a body came flying at him. Shigaraki landed on the ground motionless in front of him, half of his face badly burned. How does that feel? Izuku asked as he ducked under a swing from the villain he was still fighting. I've had enough of you now, Izuku mumbled to himself. He charged at the villain, creating some rope as he went. Sliding under the villain's legs, he wrapped the rope around them and stood up, pulling as hard as he could. The villain lost his balance and fell face first onto the floor, hitting it so hard that he passed out. Izuku quickly tied up the villain before turning to check on the others. Everyone okay? He asked. Yes, we're fine. Are you? You took some hard hits from that muscular guy, Aizawa said, stepping forward. I'm fine, Dad. I have a healing quirk, remember. He was cut off by a shout, watch out. Before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his neck and fell to the ground, crying out in distress. And that's game over for you, little experiment, Shigaraki's pained voice echoed before he collapsed. Shiro was the first to rush over to Izuku, who was thrashing in pain. Shiro carefully lifted Izuku's head into his lap. Izuku, hey, you're going to be okay. You'll be okay, I promise. He glanced at Aizawa, who was inspecting Izuku's wound. Aizawa? What was that? He's going to be okay, right? Shiro asked, panic rising in his voice. Before Aizawa could respond, Izuku's weak voice filled their ears. I can feel it. He forced another quirk on me, it'll kill me. They were planning on doing it before the heroes captured me. I let myself be caught so I wouldn't die, Izuku managed to explain through his groans of pain. He had endured a lot of suffering in his life, but this felt somehow worse. But what about your healing quirk? It should heal you, Shiro said desperately, gripping Izuku's hand. Izuku shook his head weakly. The new one will cancel out the others, that's all I know, he explained. Dad? Izuku asked, turning his head toward Aizawa, who was holding his other hand. I'm here, Izuku. I'm here, Aizawa squeezed his hand. The heroes are on their way with medics, as well as recovery girl. You'll be okay. He tried to reassure his son, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. Izuku didn't respond, turning his head back to Shiro. Hanta? He questioned, blinking a few times in an attempt to keep his eyes open as they began to feel heavy. Yeah, I'm right here, Shiro answered, tears streaming down his face. Izuku smiled weakly at him. I love you, he said softly. I love you too, Shiro replied, more tears falling. Good, Izuku mumbled, struggling to keep his eyes open. Izuku, hey, keep your eyes open, you hear me? Aizawa tapped his cheek, but Izuku didn't respond, his eyes closed completely. The last thing Izuku heard were shouts and calls from a distance, something about an ambulance arriving. Everything went black after that. Aizawa's perspective. Izuku was placed on a stretcher and loaded into the ambulance. I watched as the ambulance sped off before turning to look at my students. They were all being attended to by medics. Luckily, Izuku's plan had worked, and they only had some bruises from when the villains had gathered them. I glanced over at Shiro, who was with his friends. Mina and Denki were trying to reassure him that Izuku would be okay, but he wasn't responding. I walked over and crouched down in front of Shiro. Ashido, Kaminari, go get checked by the medics. I'll talk to Shiro. They didn't question me, though they were hesitant, and rushed over to the medics for a checkup. Shiro, listen to me, I said, and he looked up at me. Izuku is a fighter, he will be okay. Hisashi will be here soon to take me to the hospital. Do you want to come with, or should I call your parents to pick you up? I asked gently. Can I come with you? I need to be there, I need to know he's alright, Shiro said quietly, sniffing and wiping away a stray tear. Of course you can. I'll come get you when Hisashi arrives, I patted his shoulder before going to wait for Hisashi. The next morning, they finally received news. Mike, Aizawa, and Shiro stayed in the waiting room all night, anxiously waiting for any updates. They received a few updates about Izuku's condition, but hope was starting to fade. That was until a doctor came out from behind the double doors and called for anyone there for Izuku. All three of them stood from their seats and made their way over. Please tell me it's good news, Mike was the first to speak. The doctor smiled at them. Yes, we have good news. They all sighed in relief. At first, we did lose him, he ended up flatlining about 3 times, so it's a miracle that we managed to stabilize him. The doctor continued, the quirk that was given to him is unknown, but for some reason, it cancelled out all his other quirks, including his healing one. We had Recovery Girl do what she could, but by the time Izuku arrived here, he was in critical condition. The doctor sighed. We had one of our best doctors come in and try to reverse the quirk's damage. Mike interrupted, did it work? The doctor smiled. Yes, all the damage that the quirk caused was erased, and he is all healed up now, with only some cuts and bruises. What do you mean erased? What did this unknown quirk do to my son exactly? Aizawa asked. From what we gathered, the quirk was cancelling out his healing quirk, so all his old wounds that had healed reopened, the doctor informed with a grimace. Oh my God, Shiro whispered. Is that why he was screaming in pain? Because he could feel all those old wounds reopening? Aizawa asked, horrified. I'm afraid so, the doctor said with a smile. Izuku is in room 347, top floor. We gave him his own room so you can head on up. He is stable, but we would like to keep him for a few days to ensure that the unknown quirk is fully gone and his healing quirk is working properly again. He could be awake now or in a couple of days. I'll take my leave now. The doctor bowed. Thank you, doctor, Aizawa and Mike said in unison. Come on, let's go check on Izuku. Izuku woke up a couple of days later, feeling confused and achy all over. He was alone and cold, surrounded by white walls. In the dim light, he realized he was in the hospital, but how did he get there? What happened? I thought Shigaraki killed me with that quirk. Wait, where's Hanta? He was right next to me, and where's Dad? Izuku's thoughts raced until they quieted when he heard the door open. He could make out two voices but heard three sets of footsteps. He turned just as the curtain was pulled back to reveal his two dads, each holding a cup, and Shiro, who had a backpack slung over one shoulder and looked like he hadn't slept in days. They all froze for a moment. You're awake, Mike was the first to break the silence, smiling. How are you feeling? Izuku gulped. Confused and achy, he replied, his voice slightly raspy. What happened? He asked, sitting up in bed with his papa's help, leaning against the pillows. Aizawa sighed. All the villains were taken care of. Shigaraki was down and unmoving, but he injected you with an unknown quirk before we could stop him. Aizawa pinched the bridge of his nose. Some doctor was able to rewind all the damage and take the quirk away, so you're back to normal now. Your healing quirk is working its magic, just a bit slower than usual. He gestured to Izuku's face, where a bandage covered the scar across his cheek. Did I die? Izuku asked suddenly, his voice quiet. Because I swore I felt it. I felt every wound I've ever had reopen, and I felt myself slip away. He looked up with teary eyes. Is this even real? Shiro, who had been standing there trying to process everything, seemed to snap out of it. He walked over and sat next to Izuku on the bed, holding his hand. This is real, Izuku, I promise. He kissed Izuku's hand. See? Izuku didn't respond verbally, instead, he lunged forward, ignoring the pain in his body, and hugged Shiro tightly, crying silently into his shoulder. Shoo, I'm here, baby. I'm not leaving your side again, Shiro whispered, rubbing Izuku's back. Shiro let his own tears fall as he comforted his lover, overwhelmed with relief that Izuku was okay. The two cried together. Mike and Aizawa watched them with sad smiles on their faces. We're going to be okay now, right? The villains are behind bars or gone, Izuku's alive, so we're going to be okay, aren't we? Surprisingly, Aizawa was the one to ask this, his voice a whisper. Mick's face softened as he hugged Aizawa close. Yeah, honey, we're going to be okay, he whispered, holding him tighter. Aizawa hugged his husband back, sighing in relief. They were going to be okay. Izuku and Shiro had just left the hospital, with Shiro's arm wrapped around Izuku's waist. Aizawa and Mike followed closely behind, with Mick's arm around Aizawa's waist, his car keys in the other hand. Shiro had told his parents he was staying with Izuku and his dad's, unwilling to leave Izuku's side after everything that happened. Ready to go home? Mike asked as he unlocked the car and helped Aizawa get in before taking the driver's seat, followed by the kids. Aizawa and Izuku nodded, while Shiro said a quiet, yes, and then they were off. Izuku ended up falling asleep on the way back to the Eraser Mike residence, leaning on Shiro with their hands intertwined. When they arrived, Shiro picked him up bridal style and followed the adults into the house, Aizawa leading the way to Izuku's room. Shiro walked in after Aizawa and carefully laid Izuku on the bed, sliding off his shoes and putting them away. "Thank you, Shiro," Aizawa said, leaning against the door frame. "What for?" Shiro asked, looking up. "For being a good boyfriend to him. I really appreciate you looking after my son when I'm not around. He's so much happier when he's with you, I can see it in his eyes that he truly loves you. Don't ever doubt it, okay?" Aizawa said softly, smiling at Izuku's sleeping form. "Don't worry, I will always look out for him. I love him too much to ever doubt him," Shiro replied, sitting next to Izuku and gently petting his hair. "I'll hold you to that. I'll let you get some rest, you've had a long couple of days." Aizawa turned and left, shutting the door softly behind him. Shiro changed Izuku into some joggers and a t-shirt, then changed into joggers himself before climbing into bed next to Izuku and pulling him close. Not long after, Shiro fell into a deep slumber. When Izuku woke up, he found himself face to face with Shiro's chest, which he buried his face into. It was quiet in the room, the only sounds being Shiro's even breaths and the clock on the wall ticking away the seconds. But it wasn't quiet for long, as Shiro began to stir awake. Izuku lifted his head to see Shiro looking right back at him, his eyes still slightly droopy with sleep. "Morning, baby," Shiro whispered tiredly, burying his face in Izuku's hair. "Morning," Izuku replied, wrapping his arms around Shiro's waist and snuggling close again. "What time is it?" Shiro asked after a few minutes, moving back slightly to look over Izuku's shoulder at the clock on the wall. 8:47 a.m. "Come on, it's almost 9 and we missed dinner last night. You must be hungry. Let's go get something for breakfast, okay?" Shiro suggested. Just then, Izuku's stomach growled, prompting a teasing smile from Shiro as Izuku groaned but eventually complied. Sitting up, Izuku leaned over and gave Shiro a quick kiss on the cheek before getting out of bed and heading to his dresser. He pulled out some comfy lounge clothes, fluffy shorts and one of Shiro's oversized hoodies. As he changed, he was only half aware that Shiro was watching him, but he didn't mind. Once dressed, Izuku picked out some comfortable clothes for Shiro as well, basketball shorts and one of his own hoodies. He turned to Shiro, who was still sitting on the bed, and tossed him the clothes. "Come on, I smell food, and you were right, I am hungry," Izuku smiled as he climbed out of bed and quickly changed. "Okay, I'm done. Let's go get you fed before all chaos breaks loose," Shiro said playfully, grabbing Izuku's hand as they left the room. After breakfast, Aizawa and Mike left for the weekend to have some time alone, allowing Izuku and Shiro to do the same. The last thing Mike shouted before leaving was, "Have fun, and remember, the rooms are soundproof." Izuku already knew that, the whole house was soundproof, so when Hazashi accidentally used his quirk, they wouldn't get complaints from the neighbors. Izuku realized Mike said that just to embarrass them, which worked, as both he and Shiro turned beet red. Now that they were alone for the weekend, Izuku and Shiro planned to make the most of it. They settled on the couch to watch a movie, with Shiro leaning back against the armrest and Izuku nestled between his legs, his back flush against Shiro's chest. Shiro's hands rested under Izuku's hoodie. On his stomach, occasionally making soothing circles with his thumb while Izuku placed his hands atop Shiro's. They were watching a romance movie, the first one they found, but honestly, they didn't care much about the plot, they just wanted to enjoy each other's warmth. However, when an intense scene appeared on screen, Izuku found himself watching intently, feeling a mix of curiosity and discomfort as he recalled his own experiences. As the scene progressed, Izuku felt a warmth rising within him, causing him to feel slightly embarrassed. He was caught in an internal battle when he noticed Siro's hands moving. One hand slid up to his chest while the other ventured lower, causing Izuku to turn his head slightly. "What are you doing?" Izuku whispered, a hint of confusion in his voice. Siro smiled softly. "Nothing, just keep watching," he replied. Izuku looked skeptical but turned back to the TV, trying to focus on the movie. As the scene continued, Izuku felt a mix of emotions, trying to tune out the sounds from the screen when Siro's hand moved again, this time lower. Izuku tensed, feeling a rush of nerves. What are you doing?" he asked again, his voice wavering slightly. "Helping you," Siro whispered, leaning in closer. Izuku felt a shiver run down his spine as Siro's fingers explored. Izuku let out a soft sound of protest, feeling a mix of confusion and pleasure. "Don't you think it's weird?" "Think what's weird?" Siro asked, continuing his gentle movements, clearly enjoying the moment. Izuku struggled to articulate his thoughts. "Getting turned on by a scene like this," he managed to say, gripping the couch tightly. Siro chuckled softly. "Honestly, I'm pretty turned on too, but watching you get all flustered is pretty ceesy," he admitted, clearly enjoying the moment. As the intensity of the scene increased, Izuku felt overwhelmed by his emotions. "Hanta, please, can I?" he gasped, feeling a rush of pleasure. "Go on, just let go," Siro encouraged, his voice soft and reassuring. That was all Izuku needed to hear, and he surrendered to the moment, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. As they caught their breath, Siro leaned over to grab the remote and turned off the TV. "Do you want to continue or clean up?" he asked, nibbling at Izuku's neck and rubbing soothing circles on his stomach. "Continue, please." Izuku whispered, and Siro grinned, lifting him up and carrying him to the bedroom. He gently laid Izuku on the bed and kissed him passionately. Siro's hands moved to remove Izuku's shorts and hoodie, tossing them aside before undressing himself. He reached for the lube from the bedside cabinet and returned to Izuku. "Do you remember the rules?" Siro asked softly, rubbing circles on Izuku's inner thighs. "Yes," Izuku replied breathlessly. "And the rules are?" Siro prompted gently. Izuku took a deep breath. "Red means stop, yellow means slow down, and green means good." "Good boy. You ready?" Siro asked with a smile. "Hanta, please, I'm ready." "I need you," Izuku whimpered, squeezing his eyes shut. Siro nodded, a soft smile on his face as he slowly entered, allowing Izuku to adjust. "You okay?" he asked after a moment. "I'm okay, you can move," Izuku breathed out, and Siro nodded, starting to move gently. A couple of moments later, Izuku and Siro found themselves sharing a tender moment, both feeling the intensity of their connection. Izuku leaned into Siro's embrace, calming his breath and wiping away his tears. He whispered a word to Siro, signaling that he needed a moment to gather himself. Siro, understanding, gently rubbed Izuku's back, encouraging him to relax. "Are you okay?" Siro asked softly. Izuku nodded against him. "How about we take a bath and then get some sleep?" "How does that sound?" Siro suggested gently. "Sounds good," Izuku mumbled tiredly. Siro smiled and carefully stood from the bed, with Izuku wrapping his legs around Siro's waist. Siro chuckled and made his way to the bathroom. He ran a hot bath for the two of them before stepping in and sitting with Izuku on his lap. After ensuring they were comfortable, Siro whispered a soft apology when he noticed Izuku's breathing hitch. Once Izuku calmed down and seemed to drift off, Siro began washing both of their bodies clean, taking his time to be thorough and gentle. After they were both clean, Siro dried them off and dressed them in comfortable clothes before lying down with Izuku snuggled on top of him under a warm blanket. The next morning, Izuku woke up feeling clean and warm, if not slightly sore. He turned his head to look at the clock, which read 11:06. He hummed and nestled back into Siro's chest. "Are you awake, baby?" Siro's soft voice came from above him. Izuku looked up and smiled lazily at Siro. "I'm awake," he mumbled. "Are you feeling okay?" Siro asked as he sat up with Izuku, who nodded in response. "I feel alive," Izuku smiled. "Good, because you are alive," Siro replied, smiling back before leaning in to kiss him.